Hey, how's it going, boxing history fans? All of that stuff in between, just boxing fans in general. We're here for a very, very special episode with a very, very special guest. And this ties back to boxing history. And I know that the majority who follow this channel, they love and want to understand more and more as it relates to boxing history. So look no further than here. We have a special guest by the name of Sara Artes, and she is a cornerstone behind the effort to truly get the great old master Joe Gans recognized in Baltimore, Maryland, where he's from. There's a monument effort underway, and we're here to talk about it, how others can get involved, and what it'll take to make this happen. So appreciate you being here, Sara. How are things going?
Everything's going pretty well. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited to talk to you again. That's kind of become my life. So it's always good to find other
That's
people who
awesome,
want to
right?
talk. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. And Joe Gans, man, truly one of the historic great fighters that the sport has seen in general. One of the greatest of all time. My eyes, I've shared this on the channel multiple times. The greatest lightweight in boxing history, and just a great connoisseur, the first African American champion in boxing history. And it's just, he has a record that, I mean, it stands out amongst the most elite of the world, or of the world of boxing, that is. So I'm happy to be here chatting about him with you, and it's pretty amazing. Now, for people that don't know, would you provide a little background on yourself and your involvement in the world of boxing?
Sure. I'm a Baltimore native. I got into boxing through my husband Michael Benga, who was a professional fighter. He was retiring, and we opened up this boxing gym called Corner Team Inc. It was a nonprofit. We call it a community boxing program that uses boxing as a hook to build strong minds, bodies, and communities. So the idea is that we offer boxing and while we train boxers, we're also training people to become champions for life. So it's a lot more than just boxing. So that's how I got into boxing in the first place. And then the Joe Gans story. Michael and I were traveling. We were doing this little road trip, and we went to the International Boxing Hall of Fame. We just stopped off there. And I was going through the International Hall of Fame and looking at all the photos of the inductees. And I happened to see this guy from Baltimore. And I was like, okay, I didn't know about this guy. I'm from Baltimore. And it said that he was the first world African American world champion fighter. And I was like, well, we have this boxing gym. This is clearly someone that no one knows about because Michael didn't know about him. I didn't know about him. Going back to Baltimore, people didn't know about him. So started researching, saw that there was the Friends of Joe Gans organization that had been doing work. That's Kevin Grace had been doing work around Joe Gans. So I linked up with him and said I wanted to join your effort. And now a lot of the a lot of corner team is decorated in Joe Gans imagery and statistics and newspaper articles just because I feel like he's an important figure for everyone to know, not just not just boxers, not just the boxing community, but our city and obviously the wider society because he was a trailblazer for all of it.
Oh yes, yes, indeed. No, that's amazing right there, and even more special, yeah, you being a Baltimore native there and getting attached to the story in itself. And I just became a Joe Gans from just wanting to dive into boxing history a number of years back, and he was one of those individuals that stood out. So that's certainly a plus side, having someone who is a Baltimore native that is helping to lead this charge. Uh, Real
Mhm.
quick, also shout out to everyone who's in the chat. Shout out to Melissa Ty. She says hello there to you, Sara.
Hey,
Shout
hey,
out Melissa.
hey.
Big shout out to my man Random Acoustic Thoughts. He dives into boxing history, folks. Be sure to go check out Random Acoustic Thoughts. A lot of good content over there. And shout out to Hogo Boxing Foundation. Appreciate you there, Hogo Boxing. Candy Jacobs, Tamara McKinney. Be sure to check out hogoboxingfoundation.com. We have some shows coming up, as a matter of fact, on the amateur side that are Hogo boxing based. So be sure to look at the PBA boxing site as well. And shout out to Joshua as well, who dropped in, sharing some love there. And it is, he mentions a situation with the grave of Bob Fitzsimmons in this case. But I know just in that regard, of course, Joe Gans' grave is in Baltimore, and it's at a historic cemetery. We've had some chats about that in particular, and there's an event coming up in that regard. Could you share some information about that?
Yeah, yeah. So Joe Gans died in 1910, right, and was buried in Mount Auburn Cemetery, which is over in the Westport neighborhood, right outside of the city. Well, it's in the city, but right outside of downtown Baltimore. So he was buried there. His son's also buried there. His mother is buried there with him and his uncle. But Mount Auburn Cemetery was actually the first cemetery opened by and for African Americans in the city because up until I don't even know when, black people couldn't be buried in white cemeteries, or they were very limited to where they could lay their dead. And so Mount Auburn was incorporated, I think, in 1872 by Reverend James Peck of Sharp Street United Memorial United Church, which is still in existence as well over there on Dolphin and Edding Street. And so what we're going to do, it's his 115th anniversary of his death coming up on August 10th. As part of this 150th celebration, because this is Joe Gans' 150th year, we're going to go to the cemetery and have a little ceremony for him on this Saturday, August 9th, the day before. And also, I thought, because this cemetery is an historic treasure of the city. It's always endangered. Cemeteries in general are endangered spaces these days, but Black cemeteries especially are very much endangered. And so my thought was that we bring attention to all the incredible stories of this cemetery. So not just are we going to celebrate Joe Gans and honor Joe Gans, but we're going to have reenactors telling the stories of several other people. I think we have 13 reenactors that are going to be at the cemetery on Saturday, from William Ashby Hawkins, who was who led civil rights cases against to desegregate, Lily Mae Carroll Jackson, the one of the founders of I always get this wrong, Omega Phi Psi, the Qs. One of their founders, Bishop Edgar Amos Love, is buried there. Negro League baseball players are buried there. Anyway, we've highlighted 13 people that have been buried at the cemetery, and people can come and visit from 11 to 3 on Saturday and meet these people, learn more about the cemetery, learn about the efforts to preserve the cemetery, and learn more about Joe Gans.
Okay, that's awesome right there. And that is very historic. Just some of the people you named from the involvement, as well as who are actually buried there. And Baltimore is one of those cities that it is a big city relative to some of the others here in America and all that stuff, and a lot of rich history there. And I think this is an opportunity to share more of that. I know it's something that I've said here, being in DC, that I want to know more of the Baltimore history, things of that nature. I was associated with house music. I believe that's where house music might have, I guess, taken off or started, something of that nature. But that's one of the things that tends to come up. But I knew of it for sure just from the boxing standpoint. And I think this word should certainly be spread, because Joe Gans, from Baltimore, Maryland, I mean, he transcends any era in the sport. And that's one of the things that makes it pretty incredible. Just think about what he was able to accomplish. And then over the course of time, history, that is, while he is known, it's not as widely as known as you would expect it to be compared to some of the other athletes that were involved in sports from that period. And I'm sure there are like a multitude of things that probably could contribute to that. And not only such, he died at a fairly early age there when he died in 1910 of tuberculosis. So I just wonder and think about it. Do you think it was just like the times as far as how he essentially kind of fell off the radar in that capacity?
So, I mean, I've heard many different reasons. One being the rise of Jack Johnson at the same time. Like when he had died, Jack Johnson was just about to fight his big fight, and Jack Johnson was much more of a controversial figure, and a lot of attention was garnered to him. Joe Gans was also a very quiet person, and didn't like the attention. Um, so that's been one of the reasons that have been batted around. But then also, I I can't. I know it's not even I can't help but to think, but it's an act of erasure. You look at H.L. Mencken, who in his writing said there is no one more recognized than this man Joe Gans, and uh, you can go from where did he say somewhere in Baltimore all the way to Cairo, Egypt, and you utter Joe Gans, he's synonymous with Baltimore, like where you say Baltimore and everyone's like, oh, Joe Gans. There was no one who didn't know about this man, and yet even in his short years, like after he died, that story just kind of disappeared. I've been looking at newspaper articles, I've just been scouring them around his death. I found articles in Rhode Island, Boise, Idaho, in Scotland, in, like everyone cared that this man passed away. Everyone cared. But then as you progress later down the line in years, there's just a few references of, oh, remember the great Joe Gans. So I not only was it because of these other great fighters coming up and other athletes and other world events that kind of um, took the limelight away from him, but I also feel that this is just like many other people, like even these people that we're highlighting in the cemetery right now who've made great contributions, that those stories are often relegated to behind the curtains, relegated out of existence, relegated out of our public facing memory. And that's a form of structural violence. I mean, that's a whole other road we can go down.
Okay.
I don't know
Oh
if you want
yeah.
to go down it.
Hey, wherever the conversation leads us, certainly. But yeah, that is pretty crazy just to think about it, especially given all that he accomplished. The greatest lightweight in history by my book, as I've said before, and I think many will agree with me. And probably, yeah, certainly one of the greatest boxers in history. There are some who probably view him as the greatest boxer in history as well, because he was that transcendent in what he was able to do there in the sport, known to be one of those guys who was technical. He had the ability to punch, box. He could do it all, essentially, a mix of everything just at an elite level. Part of that 100 plus knockout club as well there. So that just goes to show you. And the crazy thing is, these boxers from back then, yeah, they were fighting a ton of fights, certainly by comparison today, while we see, some with some higher amateur records. But what they were doing there on the pro level, on the pro ranks, in Joe Gans, with him having 100 plus fights, and we know that history, sometimes some stuff gets lost. So it's widely known, at least for those that dive into the history, that there are likely those that weren't captured that he was involved in, that were kind of off the books, things of
For
that nature.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and to take that into perspective.
Yeah, I found some really great articles from his managers and just other people who knew him that talked about the beginnings of when he was boxing. And he was scrapping in the back of the markets downtown. And then he had some fights that I haven't been able to find on any record, right? Um, so I know you're right that there's probably many fights that he had that weren't recorded. But I think right now the official record is like 155,
Mhm.
155 belts on record. Um,
Okay.
I think there's 120 wins and just a couple losses. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And that
It's
was
amazing resume.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, yeah.
Hey, and I think that the people on this channel will appreciate it for sure there, Sarah, because we dive into, well, we're diving into the history. We're talking about all of that. We're the significant opponents and all that stuff. And Joe's resume stands out for sure. Real quick, I want to say shout out to the mom who dropped by as well, tuning in here. Appreciate you
Love it.
watching, showing some love. Shout out to my man Moss. Appreciate you being here as well, everybody. We're here with Sara Artes, and we're talking Joe Gans. You see it scrolling at the bottom there, folks. JoeGans150.com. You go there, you'll get a ton of information for sure. And I know some of you already know about Joe Gans, but that being said, there's an effort to spread that word even more. And we're going to get to that for sure. But first, Sara, I know you're versed in the backstory and history, but Joe Gans was actually not his original name. Gans
Yeah.
is not his original last name. I think some people need to know about that.
Yeah, that's actually a really important thing, especially doing genealogy work, which we're embarking on now. Joe Gans was actually adopted around the age of 4. He was adopted by the Gant, Gant, single T family. I know some people have said Gantt, but it's Gant. James and Maria Gant. Now, James and Maria Gant, they got divorced, I think, by the 1890s. But in the census records, it was shown that James Gant was from D.C. Maria Gant was from South America, from Guyana, or what was called then the British Demerara. And she was a laundress. They lived on Eastern Avenue. And this, again, like what I like to say is Joe Gans is the quintessential Baltimore story because they started off in East Baltimore over by Fells Point, the Jonestown area, right? And that's where the black community was. And they migrated in the late 1800s, early 1900s over to West Baltimore. So Joe Gans also tells that story of that great migration of the black community over to West Baltimore. Anyway, so Joe Gans they say his father's name was Joseph Cephas Butts, Butts. And Joe was named Joseph Butts after his father. But adopted by the Gant family, he became Joseph Gant. And it wasn't until a fight in like 1892 or 1893, the 1890s, that an announcer got his name wrong and announced him as Joe Gans, and he didn't even try to correct it. And it just stayed as Joe Gans from then on out. But he's actually a Gant or a Butts, not a Gans.
Got it, got it. Yeah, that's awesome right there. And I know we've shared this previously, and there have been a number of boxers over the years where they've taken on a different name due to a misspelling or error with the announcer and all of that. So that's pretty amazing thing right there. But he was able to stand out in a way that that name would be remembered. So it's one thing for them to just get your name wrong, but it's another for you to go ahead and make that impact, and that's what you become essentially, or what you get known by. So I think that speaks volumes to just the level he was at. So yeah, adopted there, and the genealogy thing, that is a very interesting. And I know we've spoken on it before, but we're seeing a bunch of strides being made in that era with these different websites that are out there. I know you can do the DNA research, send your stuff in. As a matter of fact, I've done that, and I think it opens up the doors for a lot of possibilities, potential connections. But I know that you're aware that there are individuals from the family line who are alive and well aware of Joe Gans and his feats. Could you speak on that?
Yeah. So Kevin Grace of Friends of Joe Gans, as he was doing programming around in 2010 around the centennial of his death, of Joe Gans' death, um, I think met up with all right. So Joe Gans had 3 kids. Well, let me step back a little more. We do not know the Butts family, we really don't know anyone from the Gant family. We've been tracing people, descendants of his. So he had three children. He had a James Gans, he had a Julia Gans, and then he had a child with some unknown person. We're pretty sure he had this child while he was married to one of his wives. But that woman, Gertrude Gans, was given up for adoption or adopted by someone and raised in another family. So Gertrude Gans was raised by the White family, and we are in touch, and often her descendants come and participate in programming. So Gertrude Gans, also known as Gertie Gans, married a Brown, and the Brown family is very much active and a part of the Gans of the efforts to preserve Gans' story. Julia Gans, his daughter from his second or third marriage, I don't remember off the top of my head right now. She married a butler, and we're trying to reach out to the Butler family now. They're less aware of their connections to Joe Gans. And James Gans, unfortunately, didn't have any children, also died young, and is buried next to his father. So the descendants that we know of come from Julia Gans and Gertrude Gans. He did have a son. We found a death certificate for his son, William Gans, with his fourth wife, I believe, who died in infancy.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's amazing right there. And there's a historic boxer from that era. His name's Joe Butler. He fought out of Pennsylvania, mainly in Philly and all that stuff. I wonder if there's a connection right there. I've done a video on Joe Butler.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, he's like the third world colored champion at middleweight. They had the different titles because some of the black fighters couldn't fight for titles, so they had to have their own championship. So world colored this, that, or whatnot. So yeah, there's a Joe Butler out of, I forget the part of Pennsylvania he's from, but he's associated with Philly. So interesting right there.
There could be a connection. Who knows?
Yeah, you never know. I want to look into that a little bit more because I've done something on him on the channel. But no, this is fascinating, just having that backstory and everything. Again, welcome everyone. We're here with Sara Artes, Corner Team Boxing Inc. You see it scrolling at the bottom, JoeGans150.com. And there are some amazing things that are taking place that will help to continue to get Joe Gans recognized here. Shout out to Veronica Franklin, drops in, says, hello, Sara. Would you be willing to sit down and let's just have a conversation with someone who has Joe Gans' bloodline?
Oh, yeah. We should definitely get them on. That'll be fun.
Let's do it. That would be pretty fun. Yeah. And I mean, I think that is pretty awesome that there are individuals who are alive. I get people who come by the channel who share stories of, hey, this person was my great whatever. They've been tracking here down the line for a number of the historic fighters that I've covered. And it always amazes me. That's probably the most rewarding and warming thing. And especially for someone like Joe Gans, and just knowing what he was able to do. And, when I initially reached out, one of the things was, it's just, I think contextually, some people can just see the fighter and kind of take things for what they are just based on what they may see and hear that has been documented. But once you actually dive into it, there's so many nuances, so many wrinkles, and you truly understand just how great and how tough of a fighter he was, especially given the times, because I know of situations where he was in unfair advantages, things of that nature, and he had to power his way through that. And even, certain situations where, hey, that he didn't have the control that he would have had he been of a different shade, I guess you can say. So those are a lot of things that he had to deal with coming up there. And then just being the first African-American world champion there, and just think about him as he's traveling to these different areas, because he's very much an individual who would go and fight in these different spots. Could only imagine, can't even fathom kind of what was being said and what he was going through during those times.
Yeah, I mean, there's reports of him being like lynching being threatened upon him
Yep.
um, after he won or before he even fought. Um, I came across an article the other day. I think it was out of Philly. He won. I forget the person he was fighting against, but when he won that fight, they considered shutting down boxing altogether between the races because I mean that was a big deal, right? Black people did not fight white people, and there's reasons behind it because if black people won, what does that say about about whiteness and white boxers and white superiority? And so there was he won this fight, and they considered there was an ordinance that was put like promoted or put up for whatever you call it for voting about just you could people can still box, not outlawing boxing altogether, but white people fight white people, you know. And
No.
Joe Gans actually took out an article arguing against that. He took out an article arguing against ending after he won his 1906 fight, or sorry, 1902 fight and became a world champion. There's again another call for a ban on boxing. And Joe Gans took out this long letter to the editor, letter to the mayor at the time, just saying, hey, I just fought for the city. I just won the world championship and represented the city. This is my city. I pay
Hmm.
my taxes here. I would hate to take my money and go somewhere else. But you should continue to let me and other people fight. So he was kind of on top. He might have been thought of as the silent, very demure person, but he was kind of sharp and cutting in his own ways.
Oh yes, no doubt about it. I remember that fight when he won the title against Frank Ern, who I think is originally out of Norway, actually, or Norway or Switzerland. First round knockout. This is a rematch because in the first fight, Gans got injured, but that's when he became the world champion. There, that second fight, and I
Mhm.
know that I imagine that probably ruffled the feathers of some, but it was a first round knockout, and he just showed that kind of superiority that he had
Yeah.
because he was one of the scientific boxers from that era, and he had all these attributes that I mentioned. And I do know of situations where he had to handicap himself in certain fights to let it go a certain amount of rounds just to not go in and just blast the fighter out, things of that nature. So some very compelling and polarizing things, and I think that certainly factors into the entire story.
Yeah, I
Now,
agree.
yeah, now with that in
Right.
mind, just thinking about all that he was able to accomplish, and we spoke about how I guess time sometimes it treats certain figures differently. But I will say we're in this technological age, so we have a lot of people. I know not just myself included, but there are some others who are very much vested and interested in history on YouTube platforms of that nature, who have been shedding the light on different things in relation to fighters like Joe Gans, etc. Those that have
Yeah.
written books, things of that nature. I know Colleen Acock, her, and I forget the individual she co-authored the book with. I know she's done a book on Joe Gans. There, Mark Allen Baker, shout out to him. He's done a book on a number of different fighters. He did one chronicling the Colored World Heavyweight Championship, which is a big deal because, as you mentioned there, with Jack Johnson, of course, prior to him, no black fighter got a shot at the heavyweight title, which was a big deal. That was considered to be the cream of the crop right there
Hmm.
at that particular period. I guess you could say still to a degree, but here over time, I feel we have an opportunity to continue to shed light and continue to push for getting these individuals recognized, especially when we think about Baltimore. This is the greatest athlete to have come out of Baltimore, bar none. And I know that's seeing a lot with a number of other individuals out there. I can't remember if Michael Phelps is from Baltimore, but I know I believe he's from Maryland somewhere, but that nature. But Joe Gans, no doubt, is the top dog to come out of there. And that leads us to kind of this effort. JoeGans150.com. You got a corner team doing their thing. Shout out to Ring 101 as well. But We're trying to get a monument of Joe Gans, which you would think would have already been there in Baltimore as a crucial centerpiece, but
Yeah.
not yet.
It's kind of crazy because, again, in all this research that I've been doing, there was an effort to raise money for a monument after he died by by I think the Elks. The I think they're called the Brother of Pythias or I forget how
Mhm.
you say that, but one of the fraternal organizations. They had started raising 2,000. They had up to $2,000 in the last article that I saw about this. Don't know where the money went to. And then again, H.L. Mencken, who's pretty famous, said that I get this man is is the most prolific person to come out of Baltimore, and I will call on all the finest Baltimore gentlemen to lay down some money for a monument to this guy, and I will lay down uh, first dollar, first $100, and so the cool thing about that is in our effort now to revive that movement, H.L. Mencken House that honors H.L. Mencken's legacy, they gave us the first $1,000 towards the monument. So that was kind of cool. I appreciated that. Um, but yeah, so we are slowly but surely raising the funds to erect a monument in tribute to Joe Gans. Um, right now, the proposed place is the Perkins Springs Square Park over by the gazebo. We chose that place that because he again, as I said before about this migration from east to west Baltimore, he purchased his house, his mother's house, over at 1026 Argyle Avenue, which is now the Heritage Crossing neighborhood, and it's also on the street of what's now called Joe Gans Way. Um, so his mother lived there. Joe Gans actually died there. He made his way home from Arizona and actually spent the last 3 or 4 days at that house and died there. But he trained in the park, and that's where he was. So that's where we wanted to put up the monument. There's a nice space. We're working with this very famous sculptor, Toby Mendez, who's done the Thurgood Marshall monument. He's done so much. So we're really excited to work with him. He was really excited about this project. He's already done renderings. We have a GoFundMe page, and we're hoping that this whole 150th celebration. So we've been doing programming throughout Joe Gans' 150th year to try to just build awareness around Joe Gans, his significance, his contributions, because as much as I want to jump in and go to knock on doors and ask for money, which I hate, but I will do for this man,
Mhm.
it was very apparent that when people don't know the story, when people aren't aware of the significance and that's not of importance to them, then that's kind of a futile effort. So my job for this year was to raise awareness of Joe Gans and make sure that his story and his legacy becomes now part of the forefront of Baltimore's history and legacy and what we honor here. So
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome,
that's
man. Yeah, and I want to definitely help. In my part, especially those of us here in the boxing history community, as well as those who are just actively involved with and are fans of the sport of boxing. I think there's a place for all of us, to contribute in whatever way we can, whether spreading that word, whatever it may be. So I definitely challenge all of those that are here to definitely check it out, look more into this story, Joe Gans, and help us spread this word. I know there will be some boxers that are listening. You can help spread the word, reach out to your audience as well, especially considering we're here in the DMV and we think about Baltimore, it's right here. I mean, we have to recognize one of the greatest to step foot in not only the sport, but just out of the area in general. So I think that's, the least we can do.
yeah, and did it against all odds. I mean, that is what makes that story even more incredible and more important is that he persisted. He continued to persist despite it all. And literally all was thrown at him. you know,
Oh
all
yes.
was put in his way. Yeah. So
So
it's
I'm
also a
gonna.
lesson that we can carry too, you know?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Certainly. I think that is definitely the case. I was gonna say I'm gonna share that GoFundMe in the chat as
Oh,
well.
perfect.
And what I captured, of course, it is about $250,000, if I'm not mistaken, to make this happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not cheap, that's for sure. I mean, we're going to
Okay.
do an oversized bronze statue. You know, there's a foundry here in Maryland, in Baltimore actually, that closed during COVID. So we're going to have to go out to Philly to get to have the statue founded. I think that's what you how you developed, formed, built. Um, but yeah, so we're going to go in stages. Yeah, this first stage is to raise the money to make a maquette, which is a mock-up, a small model of what the statue is going to look like, the monument's going to look like, and then we're going to use that as a fundraising effort as well. And so, if you give over a certain amount, you'll get a plaster maquette, and then continue with the GoFundMe work, continue with programming, and continue to hopefully, as awareness is raised, start knocking on larger doors that can open up larger opportunities, and to continue to apply for grants. Um, it's the cost is in the obviously in the materials and the artistry. It's also in the land and landscaping that has to be done as well. But there's like we'll sell bricks, you know, as we get closer to the realization of this, there's other opportunities that we can take to allow other people to be part of this and contribute to it, and also leave part of their legacy uh, with him.
Oh yes, rare opportunity right there. So I definitely appreciate that. I want to definitely do so myself. So I dropped that in the chat, folks. The GoFundMe
Awesome.
there, honoring the legacy of Joe Gans, and I want everyone to go by there. But we need to spread the awareness of this. We have some top level boxers here in the area, just thinking about the DMV as a whole,
Yeah.
and they can help out with the process. Baltimore in itself, there we have one of the top guys there in Tate Davis, who is out of Baltimore, kind of representing
Mhm.
for Baltimore here at the moment. Though I know he has some things going on now, but spreading that word, that is something that we can continue to push for, and I think it's certainly overdue. I saw that the governor of Maryland, he's aware, right? He's at
Yeah.
least aware of this effort.
Yeah. Yeah. He sent put out a message recognizing Joe Gans in his 150th year. That was touching. That was great. And even the mayor, although so we had this proclamation day, and the mayor signed a proclamation for the city to make it Joe Gans Day on his 150th birthday. So
Mm.
that was on November of 24th of last year, and we were supposed to have it at City Hall, but that particular day, unfortunately, was the big drug bust. So everyone, all like the governor, the mayor, everyone was at City Hall. So they called us and were like, we can't do it here. So luckily the Peel Museum opened up their doors for us last minute, and we had it there, and the mayor sent over a representative. But the cool thing was the Peel Museum is actually the old City Hall. Before the new City Hall was built, it
Mm.
was that place that was City Hall, and that was City Hall when Joe Gans was born. So for me, it was like, okay, this actually worked out for us because
History, historic.
yeah, yep. How
All
the
right.
ancestors are guiding us in different ways.
All right. Yeah, that is super awesome right there. And man, yeah, just an amazing thing. And there are a number of boxers who've competed, and I know it's other sports as well who've been forgotten here over the years. So
Mhm.
it's certainly
Yeah.
a pleasure to be able to see that this is something that is still active, and we are continue to dive into research, the genealogy you mentioned, doing that, then
Mhm.
raising that awareness, and I think it's a beautiful thing, and we'll we'll need more of this, and we should certainly continue to do more in that regard. So yeah, 150, that's major right there. And I know that people can find more info on joegans150.com, because in addition to this Saturday, where we're mentioning the Mount Aubrey gravesite visit, things of that nature, I know there are some other things coming up. Anything in specific, or any of the events coming up you want to highlight here, Sarah?
Yeah, I guess for the boxing community, we're hosting the idea for Joe Gans 150th was also to build the capacity of Baltimore boxing. And so
Mhm.
we were trying to host several boxing clinics for the coaches, for organizations to help build the capacity of organizations to function as nonprofits, or if you're for profit, but we're more focused on nonprofit work. So fighters, coaches, organizations. So we just worked it out with USA Boxing to host a bronze coaching clinic, which is it's a training certification for boxing coaches that help them train their fighters appropriately and safely. And it's a 2-day course, so we're going to be hosting that. We just got approval from USA Boxing to host the bronze whatever coaches certification at the gym in October. I think it's at the beginning of October. And then we have the 6th annual Joe Gans Memorial Fight Night coming up in November, November 8th. And so that we'll hope to see all of our world champions from Baltimore. We had them come out for the 5th annual to kick off the Joe Gans 150th celebration, hoping that they'll be back for the 6th annual to end the year. So those are the two big things right now that are coming up for us
All right.
outside
Yeah.
of this Living History Day. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome right there. And yeah, I want to make sure that I let it be known that PVA, of course, Potomac Valley Association, we're here in DC, we work with South Atlantic, who is there in Baltimore, kind of go hand in hand in terms of being at different events. And also I want to raise that awareness on the PVA side as well. So, we can
Absolutely.
have our boxers, officials, then just whoever in general support these efforts as well, because I think that's an amazing
Absolutely.
thing. Just thinking about it, given the close proximity and things. So that's something I'll definitely raise awareness for here on this end with the Joe Gans Fight Night. Hey, I'm going to try to definitely make that. I want to see that action going down there. So
Should be good
that's
this year.
so we're here with Sara Artes again. Everyone who's dropped in, showing some love. Veronica, we appreciate you dropping by as well. Says let's spread the word by sharing the GoFundMe page and let's raise money for the legendary Joe Gans. Legendary indeed. There. Now, Sara, yeah. So yeah, this is awesome stuff. I wanted to ask real quick about corner team, your involvement with corner team boxing. Can you share more in that regard for those who maybe watching, maybe they have kids or something that just have an interest in the sport of boxing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we were founded in 2017. We opened our doors and we started off in a rec center and then grew out to the gym that we're in now on East 25th Street. We're right on the border of Northeast and East Baltimore. So we're open 5 days a week, 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, and we offer youth classes, we offer adult classes, we have a competitive team, we host fights, but then again, we're more than just boxing, right? We have after school and summer programs. Like right now, we have over 40 kids paid minimum wage, 25 hours a week, paid through the summer to do programming with us. And we do the same for the school year. So, and then we have community days. We do a lot of community programming. We're just very much involved in the community because, again, we call it the community boxing program. So, we're not just building boxers, not just building champions in the ring. We're building champions for life. That's corner team
Awesome.
in a nutshell.
Good stuff right there. Now I'm dropping that in the chat as well. Cornerteam.org. Cornerteam.org. I've actually been there to the gym once. There was a show where
Okay.
I officiated. I have been there for one show. It was cool. It was
That's
cool. I
right.
saw Joe
Yeah.
Gans poster in there as well. I was chatting with another official about it.
You can't, yeah. At this point, you can't. Joe Gans is just kind of everywhere. You can't walk through any place without encountering him. And the kids will tell you that they complain sometimes about me because, I'm always every time I see someone, I'm like I quiz them on Joe Gans facts and get on them if they don't know. Because if you go to corner team, you should know.
Oh yeah. Hey, you got to keep that history alive. Don't want to lose that.
Absolutely.
That's how you do it right there. But no, awesome stuff.
Absolutely.
Here at Sara Artes, we're talking Joe Gans now in terms of we have the GoFundMe, and I wanted to know
Mhm.
we got joegans150.com so people can donate there as well, right? Because I saw that they had a donation
Yeah.
type of page that was listed.
Yeah. There's also two other opportunities. So we have
Okay.
partnered with Taharka Ice Cream, and they came up with a Joe Gans flavor called Cup of Joe. And you can buy that online. You can buy that in any of the Taharka ice cream stores. Actually, on Saturday, they're going to have their ice cream truck out at the cemetery. And so a percentage of those proceeds of the sales of Cup of Joe goes to the Joe Gans Monument. And the same thing as for Zeke's Coffee. Zeke's Coffee makes a Joe Gans Knockout Punch blend. And so, again, they have a special 150th celebration blend going on right now. Percentage of those proceeds go to the Joe Gans Monument. So, yeah, you can go fund me. You can eat a lot of ice cream. You can drink a lot of coffee. There's all sorts of ways you can get involved. But most importantly for me, I mean, outside of donating, more than donating, it's telling the story. Like that's for me. That is what is most important is making sure this story is not his life and legacy is not forgotten, and his life and legacy is given the weight and the importance that it deserves because it hasn't gotten it.
Oh yeah, it's most certainly there. I think hey, that's an amazing thing right there, and certainly kudos to yourself and others like Kevin Grace, who you mentioned with the Friends of Joe Gans, who are involved in helping to kind of push this history and spread this word. Shout out to ring announcer Jones discombobulating. He's the one who I heard mentioning it at a pro show that made
Mhm.
me want to get involved there. So shout out to him as well as he was
He's,
spreading that
he's
word. So all involved, as mentioned,
yeah.
Ring 101, having some conversations with them. But Sarah's the go-to person there, folks. You're thinking Joe Gans, and it's always amazing just chatting with her, and you get to see and hear her knowledge on Joe Gans. And for those that are on the channel, those that are listening now, those that will be listening, hey, you know that we only bring you the best right here. So we appreciate Sarah coming through and sharing that word, sharing that love there for Joe Gans, one of the absolute greats in the history of the sport. And there, I can attest that, yeah, I'll continue to do my part in helping to spread that word and try and get more and more people involved and aware of this effort that is going on because that statue, that recognition is needed.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate it, Joshua. Like you are indeed part of this struggle, this movement, and we need more people like you. Like it's not Kevin has done a lot of work. And he's getting tired, and I'm picking up his. I'm following along him and trying to give him a new wind and also put some fire. Like be a fire myself, but we need more. We need you. We need more people like you to make us even stronger. Because I can't do this forever. Other people are going to have to step up and take over as well. So, yeah, I thank you for being one of those people that's continuing this effort and making sure his story is known.
No, no doubt about it. Hey, I appreciate it for sure. And like I've mentioned, yeah, I am definitely locked in. So for others here following 86 Boxing, let's get locked in. Let's make this happen for sure. Let's continue to spread this word because this is a big deal and it's going to be amazing just when we see it come to fruition, and we see that they actually come about where the monument is there and it's erected, and we can finally recognize Joe Gans in the proper way. And I think that's a thing of beauty there. So everyone has to stay in tune and stay tuned in with what's going on here as we continue to track this. And again, JoeGans150.com. So, man, I thank you, Sarah, for taking the time, taking about an hour of your time there, nearly an hour there, to spread this word and share it. We'll have to do this again in light of some of the events and things coming up. And I'd imagine there'll be more to come, thinking about the genealogy stuff and so forth. I definitely want to continue to spread this word, especially as we have these other events that come about.
Yeah, there's so many rabbit holes we can go down. We can talk for days, for sure.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. We can start diving into the resume, all of that stuff, which shows you just how great Joe Gans was. I don't think people understand. You have to understand the resume, who he fought, talking about the Sam Langfords, the Barbados Joe Walcotts of the world, the Frank Aaron's battling Nelson, you name it. Just can go on and on for days, but we're going to dive into that type of stuff there. So definitely stay tuned. And I thank you, Sarah, and we can keep up with this. You can see JoeGans150.com, cornerteam.org. I dropped that in the chat along with some other stuff, to GoFundMe there, etc. But stay tuned. Hey, even dropping by 86 bucks, and I'm going to continue to share that information. And if you can make it out Saturday, Mount Auburn Cemetery, folks. Mount Auburn. Appreciate you there, Sarah.
Thank you, Joshua. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you to everyone who attended, and we'll catch you here on the flip side, as they say. So enjoy the